What's up, guys and girls? Iceman here. Welcome to Chilling Tales. So what I'm about to share with you guys is one of the most hideous bear attack stories that I've ever told on this channel. I almost don't want to talk about it. This horrific incident that happened in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is my state. All right, there are some weirdos in this state. I've seen a lot of them out there. All right, sometimes you just know it when you look at someone. You know that there's something off. There's something of concern. And I think that was the case with Brett. Perhaps what met him, and don't leave. Stick around for the end of the video. How this attack went is just insane. But what led to it was perhaps even more insane. So Brett was this guy who was kind of jobless, you know? He was one of those bad boys. One of those guys that lives with his mom. He did some work on the side. He'd work on cars. He was a mechanic. But he was horrible with women. He's had his rundowns, going to jail a couple times, and he met Jenny when she went to school in his little hometown. She went to this private liberal arts college or whatever you call it. He would go out on the campus and kind of talk to the girls. Maybe he was a bit socially awkward, but nonetheless, Jenny was an introvert. Chick who liked to read books, didn't have all that much experience with men. So Brett moved in, all right, on her. He didn't move in like with her, but on her, he moved in. They exchanged numbers, went on a couple dates, this and that. Somewhere down the line, the girl rejected him. Now, Brett lived in this beautiful wooded region in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. He lived with his mom. His dad has been out of the picture ever since he was a young boy. He was a bastard, you know? There's really no other way to put it. He had these tattoos running up his neck. He was on tether a couple times. He would never really have a driver's license, but he would still drive. Like I said, he worked on vehicles, and he'd take in cash payments for that. But he was so bad with people and money, he'd often try to scam his clients. He'd double cash checks. I don't know how the hell you do that. But he would double cash the damn checks, all right? He's been kicked out of many banks. They'd kick him out because he'd do screwy activity like that. He'd try to cash checks twice. The banks would have to reimburse the customer, and they'd be out the money, and Brett would still be able to keep his share that he basically stole, but I don't know. Just some weird, wonky crap going on. But when Jenny rejected him, everything changed. Now remember, in Michigan, black bears are prominent. These strong, aggressive, seemingly docile creatures. Their fangs, long as nails. Their big, yellow, bacteria-ridden claws. Their husky bodies. These things are just formidable, and you don't want to mess with them. Now, bears were prominent in the region. Brett kind of grew up ignoring them, but I mean, they'd often go through the garbage at the house and all that, and Jenny was this beautiful young woman inside and out. Just what happened to her that day is just disgusting. This poor brunette girl, olive skin, big, beady eyes, a sort of innocence about her, an aura that would radiate, that all the world, I believe, would desire, including Brett. So what he did is he kidnapped her, okay? Like I said, I didn't really want to talk about this on this channel, but you know what? It's important to gain perspective. I mean, some of you guys have children. All right, let me know in the comments if you have children. I don't have any children. But I know if I did, I'd want to hear stories like this so that I could understand what's out there. You know, what are we dealing with? And I'm not just talking about the bears. But of course, that's a valid concern as well, as you'll be soon hearing and seeing. Oh my. So that's why it's important to hear this stuff, right? But he kidnapped this girl. I think she was about 20 years old at the time, going to this small-time little Christian college. They even had this thing. I can't remember what they would call it. It's not a cathedral. It wasn't Catholicism. It was something else. I don't know, one of those church-like structures, and they'd go in there on a weekly basis. It was something old. But no, that's where he found her. And he managed to get her in his truck and drive her deep into the woods, a couple miles away from his mom's house where he lived. There were these old dirt roads, these rickety dirt roads, and this was in October, so the weather was right. They weren't caked with snow. There wasn't much hunting going on. It was getting a little cold, but he had her tied up, you know? He pulled her in there by the wrist, duct taped her up, put a sock in her mouth, duct taped that up. Poor little girl's just screaming, just terrified. She knew that was it. Here's my speculation. She knew that was it. But he took her down a dirt road in this beat up truck of his. And what he did is he went to Walmart previous to kidnapping her. He bought one of those 2-person tents and he cut the bottom out, right? And he bought one of those stakes. You know those stakes that you screw into the ground that you can then hook a dog chain up to? He bought one that was like this long, some massive screw, and he screwed it way into the ground. And he prepared this before he showed up with it. He picked out a little site, a couple 100 feet off the road. There was this little clearing out in the woods, not far from a river, and he put this spike into the ground way deep. He put a dog chain on it, a thick dog chain, and then he put the tent over this, right? Without a bottom. So it kind of appeared, it made a shelter. And what he did with Jenny, he dragged her over there. After, I don't know what he did to her, okay? I don't want to get too much into the details. But the girl was incapacitated. Is that how you said that? I don't know if he knocked her out somehow with some sort of gas, put a little rag over her mouth, or she was just terrified with fear, if he drugged her. I don't know. But the girl was dragged over to this tent, brought inside of it, chained to that damn stake that he screwed into the ground so she couldn't get away, right? He only gave it about a foot of leeway, so she was chained to this damn thing. And not to mention, he duct taped her hands up behind her back, you know? He had his way with her, and I don't know how many times, but the girl was there for like 3 days, okay? Yeah, she was starving, malnourished, no water, or maybe he'd bring her water. I think that there was actually some evidence that he brought her some water. There was a couple of those big jugs of water not far from the tent and the disaster thereof. But he'd revisit this girl and do nasty things with her. You know, poor girl's blindfolded half the time, stripped of all her clothes. But, you know, she started getting a little impreferable to Brett's standards. You know, she's getting dirty, wasn't able to clean herself. And I think that's what attracted the bear. Brett would go back to his mom's house. He'd drive that old rickety pickup truck back to his mom's house, leaving Jenny in this damn tent, staked down to the ground. And somewhere in that, the bear came. This young Bruin black bear. About 300 pounds. It probably heard the moans and cries of Jenny. Probably sounded like a little wounded bunny rabbit or something. The girl was in despair. The girl was in horror. What a nightmare she was living. But nonetheless, my speculation is that the bear either smelled some of her dried blood from when Brett was a bit overly aggressive with her, or it just heard her screams or smelled her in some way, I don't know. But the bear made its way into the tent. Now, I don't know how the timing had it in this way. I don't know how long the bear was in that damn tent. But after Brett's mother fell asleep, he decided this Saturday night, or early in the morning rather, it was about 2 a.m., he got in his truck and he went down that old dirt trail to give Jenny maybe one last visit. I don't know. I think he was planning to throw her in the river after he was finished with her. Because he had the supplies. He had chains, duct tape, some of those big boat anchors, the ones that weigh like 40 pounds. He had a couple of those. Speculation was he was going to throw her over a bridge and just let her sink to the bottom or something. Maybe after burning up her body in the fire, trying to get rid of his evidence. I don't really know, because he had a bunch of gas too. And fire starters. I think that was his plan. You know, as you guys know, I'm a pretty good detective. I have a lot of experience on this channel assessing the human mind and assessing the minds of these animals as well, both human and non-human alike. But Brett made it back to the tent. He was terrified over what he saw. He could hear Jenny going off inside, and there was something shaking the tent. Like he thought that a person got in there, you know? Like his biggest fear was the cops would find out before he could get rid of the evidence, being her body and everything else. He thought on this last night that he took too much time with her and the cops got her or something. He thought she was being ripped out of the tent by the cops. He knew he'd be, I don't really want to say the word, let's just say screwed, if anyone talked to Jenny, because she was still relatively coherent. She knew it was Brett doing this nasty job to her. All right? So Brett, seeing this, was terrified. He knew he couldn't just run away. He knew they'd get him. And he wasn't sure if it was the cops. He thought maybe it could just be a hunter or somebody. Maybe some random passerby or walked by and heard the screams of Jenny. In which case, he had to out that person as well. All right? So he had a hammer in his hand. And he went bolting around the corner. He got out of his truck. He approached the tent. He went bolting around. He was ready to pound to death whoever was in there with Jenny. You know? I mean, he knew he was going to be out. He knew that Jenny would tell him his name, his address, his mom's name, his last name, his phone number, this and that. He knew he'd be screwed. So whoever the hell she was talking to in that tent, he was going to have to, you know, give him the same treatment as Jenny and maybe burn them both up and throw them in the river. I don't know. But what he found was shocking. It was this husky black bear. Because he saw the back of the tent and you could see it shaking. He gets out of his truck. He grabs his hammer. He runs to the tent and then he runs around to the door, the entrance door, the flappy little entrance. That was zipped up, but the bear ripped into it. And he spins around, looks inside the tent, and there's this bear just standing over. He could see just its back like this. It was over. It was like, it was just ripping into Jenny. And then the bear turns around when it hears him run up. And in a moment's time, it tackles him to the ground and begins ripping into. I mean, it felt cornered. it probably wouldn't have attacked him if he didn't approach it in the way that he did. Often if a bear sees two people, like a black bear particularly, it's not protecting its cubs or anything, a bear's going to get out of there, generally speaking. That's not always the case. Yeah, we covered some incidents on this channel where that wasn't the case, where it attacked a group of 3 or 4. But most likely with the black bear, if there's 2 adults, it's going to run away. It doesn't want to risk too much. But I think it felt cornered, and it tackled him to the ground, and he swung his hammer. Oh, boom! He swung his hammer at it, knocked it across the jaw, and then it just caved in on him. The bear ripped Brett to shreds. Okay? Jenny had this massive gaping wound going across her face. Her skull was crushed by this bear, and all the marks all over her body from Brett. Just what a scene of horror and hell this was. But the bear ripped into Brett. It just raked its claws into him and just started gnawing on him. Now, there was nothing else to threaten it at this point. Brett's truck wasn't running anymore. It was, away from the tent. It was the dead of night. Jenny was moaning but still alive. It started eating him. The scavengeristic qualities of this animal kicked in, and it started eating him. It dragged him not far from the tent, dug a little cache, shat and pissed all over his corpse, and never ended up finishing off Jenny, as insane as that is. They were found later. Days after this, Jenny was dead. Okay? I don't know if she starved to death, lack of nutrition, bled to death from the bear and from Brett, but she was dead. She's still chained to the ground with that dog stake driven in. Brett was mangled, half his face was eaten off. His thigh, his little tether was still on his ankle for some previous misdemeanor he committed that year. But yeah, what a disgusting horror. And the college Jenny attended had a memorial service for, and the kids were just destroyed over this, Some of them knew who Brett was. Really, he was just a scumbag. But they knew who he was. Some of them just thought he was some shy, awkward guy. They weren't really sure. But yeah, the way this one ended, I almost didn't want to tell it, but that's how it went. I don't know. What do you guys think about that story? My heart goes out to those involved, to Jenny's family. Imagine what Brett's mother must have thought. Maybe she was just strung out the whole time. I don't know. The guy was old enough to make his own decisions. He was in his late 20s. But I'll be damned if I have to tell another story like this on this channel, but I probably will, so stay tuned for more chilling tales from the Iceman. And become a patron if you want to support the chilling tales. Links in the description below. I'm almost able to do this full time. Alright, I'm really cheap with my living. I don't require much at all. So every patron counts. So become a patron if you want to support the chilling tales, and I'll be able to do this full time soon. Thank you. I'll see you all tomorrow. Peace be with you.